You're 12 years old, barefoot, chasing chickens in the dirt outside your family shack, when a carriage rolls up that costs more than everything your family has ever owned combined. A man steps out wearing robes so elaborate they probably have their own personal tailor. He doesn't say hello. He doesn't ask your name. He inspects your teeth like your horse at auction, checks your feet like he's buying shoes, examines your skin like he's selecting fabric at a market. Then he tosses your father a bag of coins, nods once, and suddenly you're being loaded into the carriage like premium cargo headed for the palace. Your mother's crying. Your father's counting the coins. The chickens you were just chasing have more freedom than you'll ever have again. Welcome to the concubine life, where you've been selected means the same thing as you've been sentenced, and the prison is decorated in gold so you can suffer in style. If stories like this make you grateful that modern romance involves actual consent and choosing your own partner, smash that subscribe button and join the lasting legacy family right now. Every subscription tells us you want more of these wild, unfiltered journeys through history's most insane survival stories. We're building something special here, and you don't want to miss it. The carriage ride is terrible. You're squeezed between two other girls who are also 12, also crying, also completely unaware of what they've signed up for because nobody asked if they wanted to sign up. The rumors you've heard about palace girls surface in your memory, like something dead floating up from a river. Girls like you, the village women whispered, don't come back. Ever. You always thought they were being dramatic. They were not being dramatic. They were being generous with the understatement. You arrive at towering palace gates so enormous they make you feel like a particularly insignificant insect. Guards with cold professional eyes herd you through like livestock. What happens next is the most dehumanizing experience of your young life, and it's only going to get worse from here. You're stripped and inspected by officials who approach the whole situation with the enthusiasm of people doing an extremely boring job they've done 1,000 times before. One girl gets sent home because her nose is slightly crooked. Another is immediately accepted because her feet are small enough for binding. Small feet. That's the qualification. That's the hiring criteria for this particular living nightmare. And speaking of foot binding, let's talk about this for a moment, because nothing captures the beauty is literally torture philosophy of this system quite like it. They take your feet. Normal human feet, designed by millions of years of evolution to walk, run, and kick things. And they systematically break and bind them into a shape that resembles a lotus flower, which sounds poetic until you understand that achieving this shape requires breaking bones, binding everything as tightly as possible, and ignoring your screaming for weeks while your feet heal into something that makes normal walking essentially impossible. You will spend the rest of your life hobbling in tiny, careful steps, each one sending pain shooting up your legs, because someone somewhere decided that a woman who can barely walk is the height of feminine elegance. The logic is dizzying. The pain is real. You passed the inspection.
Barely.
Congratulations. You've qualified for the worst job in the building. Now you're inside the harem, which sounds luxurious and probably looks luxurious to anyone passing through on a guided tour. Silk everywhere. Gold accents on every surface. Gardens that look like someone told a professional gardener the budget was unlimited and they should go absolutely wild. It's gorgeous. It's also a battlefield with better interior decorating than any battlefield has a right to have. The older concubines stare at you with eyes that have seen things. Eyes that have calculated approximately 17 different ways you could be eliminated as competition before you even unpacked your limited belongings. These women are not your friends, your sisters, or your allies. They are your rivals, and they have been playing this particular game of survival chess since before you knew chess was a metaphor for anything. They would absolutely throw you under a carriage without losing a single moment of sleep, because in this environment, kindness is a vulnerability and vulnerability gets you starved or worse. Your first assignment: serve tea to a senior consort. Simple enough, right?
Wrong.
Nothing is simple here. Everything is a test. You pour the tea a half-second too slowly, and the senior consort's hand connects with your cheek so fast you don't see it coming. Your face stings. Your eyes water. You want desperately to cry. Crying, however, is a luxury reserved for people whose misery doesn't have consequences. You swallow everything: the pain, the humiliation, the very reasonable anger, and you bow and apologize for pouring too slowly. This is your orientation day. It gets worse. The rules of palace survival, as you learn them over the following weeks, are elegantly simple and absolutely brutal. Obey everything. Charm everyone. Survive by any means necessary. Slip up on the obey part, and you get beaten. Fail the charm part, and you get demoted to cleaning latrines. Fail the survive part, and, well. A girl whispers to you one night about a concubine who spilled wine on a nobleman 3 weeks ago. Just wine. On a sleeve. Nobody's seen her since. The rumor is that she's buried somewhere under the East Garden, which explains why the flowers in that section grow particularly well. You decide immediately that you will never spill anything on anyone for as long as you live. By 13, you've developed what professional athletes might call muscle memory and what psychologists might call trauma responses, but in this context is simply called knowing how to survive another day. Your feet throb constantly from the binding. Your knees are permanently bruised from the required kneeling. Your smile is so practiced it happens automatically even when you're experiencing internal screaming, which is most of the time. The competition for the ruler's attention is the central organizing principle of everything happening in this palace, and it is vicious in ways that would make professional competitors in any other arena weep with recognition. Every concubine is angling for the same prize: to be summoned, to be noticed, to potentially produce an heir, which is the golden ticket that transforms your status from decorative human furniture to person with actual political power. The stakes could not be higher. The tactics could not be lower. A concubine named Jade, not her real name, but she wears so many jade hairpins that it becomes how everyone thinks of her, spreads a rumor that you stole a noblewoman's comb. You didn't. You've never even seen this comb. The comb may not even exist. Truth is completely irrelevant here. What matters is that the rumor exists, that people repeat it, and that while people are repeating it and you're defending yourself, Jade is positioning herself closer to the ruler's direct line of sight. You spend the next week scrubbing latrines while she bats her eyes at anyone with power. This is her 5th successful social assassination of this type. She's quite good at it. You hate her with the focused intensity of someone who has nothing else to focus their hatred on. Another concubine, one of the quieter ones who's survived long enough to have opinions worth listening to, pulls you aside one evening and delivers the most important advice you'll receive in this place. Trust nobody. They will wrap a knife in silk and hand it to you smiling, and you'll be bleeding before you realize what happened. She's not wrong. Last week, a girl was caught exchanging a single meaningful glance with a palace guard. One glance. The kind of glance any normal human might exchange with any other normal human in any normal context. In the palace context, it was interpreted as something dangerous. She was removed from the premises. Nobody discusses what removed means in practice. Pressing pause on the horror to remind you, if you're finding this journey through history's most intense survival story as fascinating as we think you do, please subscribe to Lasting Legacy right now. Hit that button, turn on notifications, and join thousands of history lovers who are here for exactly this kind of wild, unfiltered deep dive. Your subscription literally keeps this channel alive and lets us keep making content like this. Now back to our regularly scheduled palace nightmare. Your big break comes unexpectedly, as big breaks in terrible situations often do. A senior consort selects you to serve at an important banquet. This sounds like recognition. It is not recognition. It is more like being handed a tightrope and being told to cross it over a pit of actual snakes while everyone watches to see if you fall. You're dressed in silk that costs more than your entire home village's annual income. You look spectacular. You feel like you might have a complete physical and emotional breakdown at any moment. The banquet is full of powerful people who have the authority to improve or destroy your life based on nothing more than their mood at any given moment. You pour drinks. You smile. A nobleman's hand grazes your wrist, and you do not flinch, because flinching is not an option. The ruler's mother watches everything from her elevated seat with the focused attention of a predator watching prey and the expression of someone who has seen so many girls fail at this exact moment that she stopped finding it interesting. She looks at you. You look at the cup. You set the cup down perfectly. You step back. She nods. Not useless, she says. In this environment, not useless is a standing ovation. You've passed. You exhale approximately 45 minutes of held breath. Then everything changes completely because just as you're finding your footing, the gong sounds and someone announces the ruler is selecting company for the evening, and there's a possibility, an actual possibility, that you might be chosen. The emotional experience of this announcement is impossible to fully convey. On one hand, being chosen means potential elevation, potential status, potential security you don't currently have. On the other hand, being chosen means being carried in a palanquin to a room where someone with absolute power over your existence is waiting, and you have to perform perfectly, or the consequences range from immediate demotion to considerably worse outcomes. You're 12 months into this situation, and you're calculating the pros and cons of the ruler's attention like a seasoned political strategist, which is what this environment turns 12-year-old girls into. You're chosen. You survive the night. The cost of surviving lives in your hands, which don't stop trembling for 3 days afterward. By 15, you've become something you wouldn't have recognized at 12. The girl who chased chickens and didn't know what a palace looked like has been replaced by someone who reads a room the moment she enters it, who can calculate social danger the way other people calculate arithmetic, who knows which smile to deploy in which situation, and which words to arrange in what order to navigate any political minefield she encounters. You are, by any objective measure, extremely good at surviving. The psychological cost of becoming this good at surviving is something you don't have the luxury of examining right now. 16 arrives and brings with it the most complicated news of your life. You're pregnant. In the outside world, this would be uncomplicated good news, shared with excitement and surrounded by supportive people. In the palace, this news is simultaneously the best thing that has happened to you and an immediate escalation of every danger you already faced. A child, especially a son, elevates your status dramatically. It also paints a target on you so bright that rivals can see it from across the courtyard. A concubine who produces an heir has power. A concubine with power has enemies. More enemies than you've ever had, which is saying something because you've had quite a few. Jade. Remember Jade with the hairpins? Starts a rumor within the week that you've been poisoning her tea. You haven't touched her tea. You've been avoiding her general vicinity since the comb incident. The truth, again, does not matter. You're dragged before the ruler's mother, who looks at you with the expression of someone who has heard this exact accusation many times and is choosing whether to believe it based on factors that have nothing to do with evidence. Your knees hurt from kneeling. Your heart is doing something medically concerning. You keep your voice steady through what feels like supernatural effort and swear your complete innocence. A servant saves you. A quiet girl who was standing in the corner when you poured the accused tea, who nobody noticed because nobody notices quiet girls in corners, who saw everything and decides for reasons of her own to tell the truth. You are spared. Jade loses this particular round. You make a mental note to do something genuinely kind for that servant as soon as humanly possible. Your son is born, and the palace buzzes with the energy of a place whose political calculations have just been dramatically reshuffled. A male heir changes everything. You hold him in the small hours of the morning, whispering promises you're not entirely sure you can keep, while keeping one ear trained for the sounds of anyone approaching with intentions that are anything other than innocent. Sleep becomes something that happens to other people in other places. You exist in a permanent state of vigilance that would be recognized by anyone who has ever been in a situation where relaxing could get them or someone they love killed. You're named a low-ranking consort. You've climbed one rung. The palace is an extremely tall ladder, and you're somewhere near the bottom third, but you're moving upward, and that has to count for something. It counts for something. It also makes you more visible, which makes you more vulnerable, which means the game simply intensifies rather than getting easier. The game never gets easier. The game just changes shape. An ally, a concubine named Rose who has survived longer than almost anyone in your tier, brings you intelligence about a new plot. Jade's replacement, a concubine you'll call Pearl because of her earrings, has apparently bribed a palace official to plant evidence of treason in your quarters. Treason. Not just a rumor this time. Actual physical evidence that would lead to an actual execution, not just yours but your son's. The stakes have escalated from social destruction to physical elimination, and you process this information while maintaining a completely calm external expression because this is what you've trained yourself to do. You move fast. You secure a loyal maid with a gold hairpin that represents a significant portion of your material wealth. She exposes the plot before the planted evidence can be discovered. Pearl is dragged away, her screams bouncing off silk walls and gold ceilings and expensive tapestries on her way out. You stand watching this with your son in your arms and hands that will not stop shaking no matter how many times you tell them to. Every victory costs something. You're starting to understand that the currency being spent is pieces of yourself, and the account is not infinite. 18 arrives, and you are a different creature than the 12-year-old who arrived in a carriage not knowing what cargo she was. You are sharp. You are strategic. You are tired in a way that has nothing to do with sleep. A new girl arrives, younger, with the wide eyes and the particular kind of beauty that catches attention, which is the kind that makes you dangerous in the exact way you were once dangerous. You watch the ruler's attention shift, like a weather vane finding new wind. Your son is your primary protection now. You pour your energy into him, into teaching him to navigate what he's been born into making sure that whatever happens to you, he carries something worth carrying forward. When a plague sweeps through the palace, the whispers start immediately about another purge. Too many concubines consuming too many resources. Not enough political will to protect the lower-ranked ones when resources get scarce. You've heard about the last purge. The numbers are genuinely appalling, spoken in hushed voices by people who survived it and still look haunted when they remember. You pull your son closer. You pray with the focused desperation of someone who has exhausted every other option. Before we get to the end of the story, let me ask you something. If you've made it this far with us, through 12 years of palace survival, court politics, and some genuinely unhinged historical circumstances, then you are exactly the kind of person lasting legacy exists for. Please subscribe to this channel right now, if you haven't already. Tell a friend about us. Share this video. Every single subscriber is a vote for more content like this, more wild dives into the lives history forgot to make comfortable, more stories of ordinary people navigating extraordinary and often completely insane circumstances. We genuinely cannot keep creating without your support, and we are deeply grateful for everyone who's already part of this community. At 22, everything comes crashing toward the ending all at once. A rival concubine, one of the veterans, calculating and cold, accuses you of using witchcraft to cause the ruler's illness. Witchcraft. In a palace that runs on political calculation and evidence planting, witchcraft is the nuclear option of accusations because it's impossible to disprove and terrifying enough that people believe it first and ask questions never. You're hauled into a stone courtyard under cold moonlight with your son's cries echoing somewhere behind the walls. You're forced to your knees, bound feet sending their familiar agony through your bones. The ruler's mother stands over you looking like a personification of the judicial system at its most merciless. Confess, she says, or your boy joins you in whatever comes next. Your throat is completely dry. Your heart has decided this is the moment to beat loudly enough to hear. You deny everything. Again. And you pray, not with religious fervor, but with the pure, desperate hope of someone who has survived this long through a combination of intelligence, luck, and other people's mercy, and who needs exactly one more instance of that luck right now. Your loyal mate arrives. Somehow, impossibly, with a stolen letter proving the entire accusation was manufactured. The witchcraft accusation was itself a kind of witchcraft, an illusion constructed from bribery and planted evidence by someone who wanted your position and your son's claim eliminated simultaneously. The letter proves it. The accuser is removed from the premises. You are spared. You hold your son that night without sleeping because sleeping would require letting your guard down, and you have forgotten how to do that. By 25, your body is presenting the bill for a decade of bound feet, constant kneeling, inadequate sleep, chronic stress, and whatever the palace equivalent of a healthcare system is for lower-ranked concubines, which is essentially nothing. Your feet are infected. Your joints ache with the persistence of things that have been treated badly for too long and are now making their complaints impossible to ignore. Your lungs have been compromised by an illness that palace doctors considered beneath their attention to properly treat. You are no longer the ruler's favorite. A new girl took that position months ago, her laughter filling the spaces where yours once echoed. You watch this with less bitterness than you might have expected, because you've been in this palace long enough to understand that the favorite's position is simultaneously the most coveted and the most dangerous spot in the building. Let her have it. Let her learn what you learned. What you've done instead is more quietly powerful. You've trained younger girls in the arts of actual survival. Not the performed arts, not the fan movements and the sake pouring and the carefully calibrated smiles, but the real ones. How to read a room. How to identify which allies are genuine and which are performing alliance. How to move through a political environment where every conversation is a potential trap without becoming so paranoid you can't function. How to protect yourself when the people who are supposed to protect you sold you for coins when you were 12. Your son is safe. Hidden with distant relatives who owe you a favor that will never be fully repaid but will be honored, because sometimes people in impossible situations find each other and choose to be decent. He is alive. He carries your eyes and apparently your stubbornness and a fighting chance at a life you never got to have. That is the thing you are most proud of in a life that has contained precious few reasons for pride and abundant reasons for the other thing. As your fever climbs in those final days, the palace continues around you with the absolute indifference of institutions that were never built to care about any individual within them. Silk rustles. Political calculations continue. New girls arrive in carriages, looking up at the gates with the same expression you had when you arrived, that particular combination of terrified and not yet fully understanding what the terror is justified by. The machine continues. But here is what the machine missed. You were never just a concubine. You were never just cargo, or livestock at auction, or a political piece on someone else's board. You were a 12-year-old girl who was handed an impossible situation and figured out how to survive it longer than most. You were someone who kept faith with a child who deserved protection in a place that offered none. You were the quiet creator of survival knowledge passed forward to women who needed it desperately and received it from your hands. Your last breath is quieter than you'd expect for someone who spent a decade making as little noise as possible. Your son carries your fight forward into whatever comes next. Sometimes a spark is enough to start something that outlasts the person who struck it. If this journey through the palace's silk-wrapped brutality left you thinking about how much history forgets about the women who lived inside it, subscribe to Lasting Legacy right now. Every subscription, every like, every comment, every share tells us that these stories matter, that the people history overlooked deserve to have their experiences understood and not forgotten. We are here to tell those stories as long as you're here to listen to them. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you never miss one of these journeys, and we'll see you in the next story. Because history is full of people who deserved better than they got, and the very least we can do is remember them well. Sonnet 4.5